have Dr. Elliot Datcher with us today, who's board certified in internal medicine and has taken his training to a step well beyond where he was taught. It includes a lot of holistic things, a lot of integral kinds of thinking that involve meditation, yoga, imagery, biofeedback, and much more. It's a lot about self-healing and self-regulation. And today we're going to talk a bit about suffering and how that fits into our lives. And there's a lot of philosophers who have said life is about suffering. And indeed, and hopefully we learn from something from that, and maybe there's a way around it. Is there?
Oh, there's definitely a way around it, because suffering is not innate to human life. Mm-hmm. It's an add-on. It's a superimposition on human flourishing, or the qualities of happiness and well-being and compassion. Those are natural to human life if we can reveal those within ourselves. So suffering is something that is not necessary. It's not something we have to have.
Okay.
The problem is we don't know anything about suffering, do we?
No, I don't know. I experienced a lot of it.
That's right. Of the types of suffering, the first one is exactly what you're mentioning, and that's we experience suffering. Mm-hmm. We have it. We know it's there. We wait till it's gone. We treat it, but we otherwise don't know anything about it.
Right.
It's quite bizarre. How can you do something if you don't know the cause of it? How can you do something about it? We don't know suffering. So one of the great Eastern teachers said, you must know suffering. And it was meant in two ways. Okay. You must first know the experience of suffering to be motivated. Uh-huh. But then if you want to do something about it, you have to really understand what suffering is about. If you understand the causes, then you can apply the solutions. And in our culture, we don't even really examine that. It's quite strange. We suffer a great deal, but we never ask the question, why do I suffer? Beyond the most superficial.
And people don't really offer the answer easily either.
They don't. And most of our suffering really comes from our emotional afflictions. That is from a sense of jealousy or pride or anger or excess attachment or grasping or greediness. And where do these emotional afflictions, these worries, the anxiety, the stress, develop from? Well, the strangest thing is that they develop from the very place we wouldn't think they develop from. They develop from what we call pleasure. The major cause of suffering comes from disguised suffering, which is pleasure that is seen as pleasure but actually is suffering. Mm-hmm. So what do I mean by that? Well, we come out of childhood often not having the kind of contentment and satisfaction inside that we should have left childhood with. So what we learn in our culture and our education is go out there and find it in the outer world. Go and find all sources of contentment, peace, security, satisfaction in the outside world, in relationships, in achievement, in success, in ambition, in name, in fame, in money.
You just described Western civilization.
That's correct. So we put so much energy into all these external forms of pleasure. But the fact is that if you look at these things, none of them contain pleasure actually in themselves. You go out and have a great meal that's pleasurable, right?
Yes.
You've done that?
Yes.
If you eat that same meal for 20 minutes, for 2 hours, for 10 hours, is it still pleasurable?
No.
It's unpleasurable.
Yeah.
So obviously the pleasure is not in the meal itself. It's in my own experience of that meal. It's within me.
Okay.
You have a fan. In the winter, wow, that's not pleasurable. Same fan in the summer, I can't do without it. It gives me so much pleasure. So we begin to see as we analyze this that pleasure is not inherent or innate to any experience that we consider to be pleasurable. It's how we come to it and the causes and circumstances. So we learn whatever is pleasurable can quickly become unpleasurable. And because the nature of everything is impermanence, nothing stays the same. A good relationship changes, this changes, that changes. Our achievements change, we have too much, we have to take care of what we have, we may lose it, we worry about it. So the whole journey around trying to achieve pleasure is a chasing after suffering.
Well, you've set up an amazing dichotomy here. We're looking at narcissistic things and self-pleasure that's temporary, that makes us have a sense of power or a sense of wealth or a sense of being better than or competing with the other side of the picture, which is about loving and giving and sharing and supporting and listening and caring. Though that's the other side of the picture, and I'll bet that's where you're going to lead to.
Yeah, it certainly goes to that. When we begin to clear our mind and open our heart, we begin to find within sources of peace and contentment, all those things that we perhaps should have left childhood with. We kind of reparent ourselves, and we find forms of peace and contentment and happiness that are immune because they're not dependent on the food or the relationship or the sustaining of position or power or wealth. They're inside. They're always there.
It's about making someone else happy.
That's correct. So if we see the first cause of these emotional afflictions that comes from searching outside for what is only inside
Right.
is the main cause, and if we go underneath that to the deeper cause, we see it's the loss of our place and home. It's the loss of the center of our being. It's the loss from our just being in the essence of who we are with peace. When we can recapture that, then we have an enduring experience of happiness, and suffering comes to a complete and total end, as well as all the emotional afflictions related to it.
You've read a whole book. You've written a whole book on this now. What's the name of the book?
Well, the entire book isn't on it, but the whole path that
Leads to
moves us is in it. The book is called Aware, Awake, Alive, a comprehensive guide to the ancient practices of integral health and human flourishing. And it comes out of a 10-series program I've done for 4 or 5 years, teaching people these skills of returning to the center of our being, understanding the nature of suffering, the nature of human flourishing, which reveals itself when we begin to extinguish suffering. So the basic point I want to make is that suffering has causes. And if we begin to analyze it, we can understand it. And the moment we understand it, we know the remedies and treatments for it.
What you've just offered is a manual that allows people to find purpose in life and how to run their life. When we're born, we don't have the luxury of having an instruction manual that says, this is what life's about. This is what you should be trying to achieve. So it's showing you that through education. And our parents, unfortunately, don't know this because they're, in their 20s? How much does a 20-year-old really know about things that took us 50 or 60 years to begin to dabble with? So the book, I think, is a great thing for people to read. I hope that it becomes part of a course in schools, in every school at every level, where we fundamentally look at things like that rather than reading, writing, and arithmetic, which are useful, but don't give us that approach to what we need if we're going to have lives that are successful and meaningful. Thank you, William.
Thank you.